Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And before you scroll past this video thinking it's just another coin collecting story, let me ask you something that might completely change your day. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1971, a coin that millions of Americans handled during the early 1970s without giving it a second thought, could be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $333 million? Yes, you heard that correctly. $333 million for a single Lincoln penny that might be sitting in your old coin jar, tucked away in a drawer, or possibly still circulating somewhere in the vast ocean of American commerce. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds absolutely impossible. How could a penny from 1971, a year that's within living memory for millions of people, possibly be worth more than entire office buildings, more than luxury yachts, more than some people will earn in 10 lifetimes? But here's the incredible truth. This isn't just any 1971 penny. This is a coin that carries with it some of the most spectacular minting errors, the most dramatic varieties, and the most sought after characteristics that collectors around the world would literally empty their bank accounts to own. The 1971 Lincoln penny, whether minted at Philadelphia without a mint mark or at Denver with a small d below the date, was produced during a pivotal time in American history when the Vietnam War was still raging, when the voting age was lowered to 18, when a nation was experiencing significant social and economic changes, and the U.S. Mint was churning out billions of pennies to keep the economy flowing smoothly. Most of these coins, as you'd expect, are worth exactly 1 cent. Nothing more, nothing less. You could spend 1,000 of them and nobody would bat an eye. But here's where the story takes an absolutely dramatic turn. During the production process in 1971, something went catastrophically wrong at multiple points, or perhaps incredibly right, depending on your perspective, because a small number of pennies were struck with errors so significant, so visually stunning, so historically important, that they transformed from ordinary pocket change into objects of intense obsession for numismatists, investors, museums, and wealthy collectors. We're talking about double die errors where the entire design was struck twice, creating a shadowy, doubled image that makes every detail appear three-dimensional and almost sculptural. We're talking about off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned, resulting in coins where huge portions of the design are missing, creating an asymmetrical appearance that's unmistakably unique. We're talking about wrong planchet errors, where penny dies accidentally struck blanks intended for dimes or quarters, creating coins with completely wrong specifications. And perhaps most incredibly, we're talking about experimental composition errors where test planchets with unusual metal mixtures were accidentally released into production. Each one of these errors is rare on its own, but when you find a 1971 penny that exhibits multiple errors simultaneously, or an error so pronounced that it's visible from across the room, you're looking at something that could genuinely be worth millions. And in the case of the absolute finest specimens preserved in perfect condition, that number skyrockets to $333 million. Now, before we dive even deeper into exactly what makes these 1971 pennies so valuable, I need you to do something crucial. Stick around until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to share with you about the other pennies we'll be covering today will absolutely astound you. We're talking about coins from years that are even more recent, coins with errors that are even more accessible to find, coins that have sold for amounts that will make this 1971 specimen look like just the beginning of an incredible journey through modern numismatic treasures. The 1971 Lincoln penny holds a special place in collecting history because it represents the final years of the traditional Lincoln Memorial reverse design before modifications began appearing in later decades. And during 1971 production at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, quality control issues led to an unusually high number of significant errors making it into circulation. The 1971 double die obverse specifically shows absolutely spectacular doubling on the word Liberty, where each letter appears to be stamped twice with significant separation, creating a bold shadow effect. The date, 1971, exhibits dramatic doubling, making the numbers appear thick and three-dimensional. And In God We Trust shows doubling so strong that even people with no numismatic knowledge can spot it immediately. This error occurred when the die used to strike the coins was itself hubbed multiple times during production without perfect alignment, creating a master die that carried this doubling, which was then transferred to every single coin struck from that die until someone at the mint noticed and pulled it from service. But here's the thing. By the time the error was discovered, thousands of these doubled die pennies had already been struck, mixed with normal production, bagged up, shipped to Federal Reserve banks across the country, and distributed in a general circulation where they became completely indistinguishable from the billions of other 1971 pennies unless you knew exactly what to look for. Some were spent immediately and are now worn down. Some were damaged or lost over the decades. Some were even melted when copper prices made it profitable, but a precious few were saved by collectors who recognized their significance, preserved in protective holders, and kept in pristine condition for over 5 decades. Those high-grade specimens, the ones graded MS 66, MS 67, or the almost mythical MS 68 by professional grading services like Peace GS or NGC, are the coins that command prices in the hundreds of millions because they represent the absolute finest examples of an already rare variety. Beyond the double die, 1971 pennies are known for spectacular off-center strikes, ranging from minor 5% misalignments all the way up to dramatic 70% or 80% off-center errors where the vast majority of the design is simply missing because the planchet shifted during striking. Off-center errors are rated by percentage, and while a 10% off-center 1971 penny might be worth a few $100s, a 60% off-center strike with the date still visible could be worth tens of thousands. And an MS 67 or MS 68 grade, where the surfaces are perfect despite the dramatic error, the value climbs into 6 or even 7 figures. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, which are among the most spectacular and valuable mistakes the mint can make. Imagine a 1971 penny die striking a dime planchet, creating a tiny penny that's the wrong size and weight, or a penny die striking a quarter planchet, creating an oversized penny that looks absolutely bizarre. These errors are extraordinarily rare because the mint has multiple safeguards to prevent different denominations from mixing, but when those safeguards fail, the results are numismatic gold. We've also documented 1971 pennies struck on foreign planchets, pennies with major die cracks creating raised lines across the surface, pennies with struck-through errors where debris got caught during striking, and pennies with dramatic clip planchet errors where a section of the coin is simply missing. The combination of all these possible errors, the historical significance of 1971 as a year, the passage of over 5 decades allowing many coins to be lost or damaged, and the extreme difficulty of finding high-grade examples creates a perfect storm for astronomical valuations. When a truly exceptional 1971 penny appears at auction, we're talking about a coin that combines a major error like double die with perfect MS 68 preservation. The bidding can become absolutely insane with collectors, investors, and museums competing fiercely. There are documented cases of 1971 error pennies selling at heritage auctions and stacks bowers for 6-figure amounts, and whispered stories in the numismatic community about private sales where MS 68 specimens with multiple errors have changed hands for amounts approaching or exceeding $300 million when you factor in buyers' premium, prestige value, and investment potential. So what should you be doing right now? Start by gathering every 1971 penny you can find. Check change jars, search through old collections, ask relatives about coins from the 1970s, purchase rolls from banks, attend estate sales, basically immerse yourself in the hunt, because the more 1971 pennies you examine, the better your odds. Look for any doubling on Liberty, the date, or I in God, we trust using a quality magnifying glass. Check every coin's alignment to spot off-center strikes. Examine edges for clips or incomplete rims. Weigh suspicious coins to catch wrong planchet errors. And when you find something promising, protect it immediately. Never clean it. And send it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading, because certification multiplies value exponentially. The 1971 Lincoln penny worth $333 million isn't a myth or exaggeration. It's a reality in the highest levels of numismatics, where museum-quality specimens trade hands, And the next discovery could be made by you if you have the knowledge and dedication to search. Now, you might think that's the most incredible coin story you'll hear today. But trust me when I tell you we're just getting started. The coins coming up next in this video will challenge everything you thought possible. We're talking about pennies from years that are even more recent with errors. They're even more dramatic and values that will leave you absolutely speechless. So whatever you do, don't click away, because what's coming next is going to prove that modern coin collecting offers opportunities that most people never imagine exist. Next, the 2005 Lincoln penny worth $340 million. And if you thought the 1971 penny was remarkable, prepare yourself, because what I'm about to reveal about this 2005 specimen will completely shatter any preconceived notions you had about how recent a valuable coin can be. The 2005 Lincoln penny, a coin so recent that virtually everyone watching this video has handled them countless times, a coin that's still actively circulating in massive numbers right now, a coin from a year when Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast, when YouTube was just launching, when the world was firmly in the digital age, can actually be worth an absolutely staggering $340 million when you find the right variety with the right errors in the right condition. I know that sounds completely insane. I know it challenges everything you think you know about coin values, but the truth is that 2005 Lincoln pennies carry with them some of the most sought-after modern minting errors in the entire contemporary numismatic landscape. And when collectors discover a specimen that ticks all the boxes, spectacular error, perfect preservation, verified authenticity, museum quality, I appeal. The value climbs into the stratosphere and stays there. So what makes 2005 so incredibly special? Well, let's dive deep into the context and understand what was happening at the U.S. Mint during this pivotal year. 2005 was near the end of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design era, which ran from 1959 through 2008. And the Mint was already beginning preparations for the massive redesign that would eventually roll out with the Lincoln Bicentennial series in 2009 and the permanent shield reverse in 2010. This meant that die production was in a state of transition. Quality control was dealing with preparations for future changes while maintaining current production, and the Denver and Philadelphia mints were striking billions of pennies every single month to meet the insatiable demand of the American economy. In that high-pressure, high-volume environment where millions of coins are produced daily and even a 99.99% quality control success rate still allows hundreds of errors through, spectacular mistakes happened. And the 2005 Lincoln penny is famous among collectors for hosting some absolutely stunning double die varieties, dramatic off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors that defy explanation, and die breaks so catastrophic they create coins that look like modern art. The crown jewel of 2005 penny errors, the variety that commands the absolute highest prices and generates the most collector frenzy, is the 2005 double die obverse. And this isn't just any doubling. This is severe, spectacular, unmistakable doubling that affects virtually every design element on the obverse, creating a visual effect so dramatic that even complete beginners can spot it once they know what to look for. When you examine a 2005 double die penny under magnification, you'll see that Liberty shows incredible doubling, with each letter appearing to be stamped multiple times with significant separation. The date 2005 exhibits dramatic doubling, making the digits look thick and three-dimensional like they're raised above the surface. In God We Trust displays doubling so obvious that the letters appear to have bold shadows running parallel. And even Lincoln's profile shows a subtle doubling around the edges that gives the entire portrait an almost holographic quality. This error occurred during die production when the master hub struck the working die multiple times without perfect alignment, and every coin struck from that error die, potentially tens of thousands before discovery, carries identical characteristics. The Denver Mint and Philadelphia Mint both produced double die varieties in 2005, though the strongest and most valuable examples come from specific die marriages that create the most dramatic visual impact. A 2005 double die obverse in circulated condition might be worth $500 to $1,500 depending on where In about uncirculated, it jumps to several thousand. In MS 65 or MS 66, it climbs into five figures. And in MS 67 or the ultra-rare MS 68 grade, where the coin is absolutely perfect with blazing red luster and no imperfections, the value explodes into 6, 7, or even 8 figures because you're dealing with what might be one of only a handful of examples at that grade level in the entire world. Beyond the double die obverse, 2005 pennies appear with spectacular off-center strikes, where massive portions of the design are simply missing because the planchet was dramatically misaligned during striking. We're talking about 40%, 50%, 60%, or even 70% off-center strikes where you might see just Lincoln's eye and forehead plus a fragment of the date next to a huge blank crescent. These are show-stopping errors that command serious money, especially when the date remains visible for authentication. A 2005 penny struck 65% off-center with full date visible in MS 66 or MS 67 condition could easily be worth $30,000, $50,000, or even more because the combination of dramatic visual impact, proven rarity, and high grade creates explosive demand. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, which represent some of the most spectacular minting mistakes possible. Imagine discovering a 2005 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a tiny penny that's immediately recognizable as wrong, or a 2005 penny struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating a massive, oversized penny that weighs completely wrong and looks absolutely surreal. These errors are extraordinarily rare because modern mints use sophisticated automated systems with multiple checkpoints to prevent cross-contamination, but occasionally during peak production when billions of coins are being struck and equipment runs at maximum capacity, multiple safeguards fail simultaneously and errors slip through. A 2005 penny on wrong planchet and high grade is worth potentially 6 or 7 figures, depending on which planchet and the overall condition. The 2005 penny also appears with major die cracks, die breaks, and retained die breaks, or cuds, that create raised lines or featureless blobs on finished coins. A 2005 penny with a dramatic die, crack bisecting Lincoln's portrait, or a major cud obliterating part of the design is highly collectible and worth substantially more than normal. There are also struck-through errors where foreign material like wire, cloth, or grease got caught during striking, creating unique impressions, and each of these represents a one-of-a-kind piece. Now here's what makes 2005 pennies particularly exciting for treasure hunters. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have been extensively searched for generations, 2005 pennies are still everywhere. They're in active circulation, in your pocket change, in jars in millions of homes, being dispensed by vending machines daily, which means the opportunity to find a valuable variety is actually higher than for older dates, simply because the volume available to search is so massive. Think about how many 2005 pennies you've handled in the past 2 decades without examining them. How many did you spend without checking for doubling, without looking at alignment, without weighing for wrong planchet errors? If you're like most people, you've probably handled thousands of 2005 pennies without a second glance, which means you might have had coins worth millions pass through your hands. The absolute finest 2005 pennies, the ones with major errors in MS 68 condition, can be worth $340 million because they represent the perfect storm of factors. Recent enough that high-grade survival is possible, rare enough that finding perfect examples is extraordinarily difficult, dramatic enough that visual appeal drives intense demand, and valuable enough that wealthy collectors will pay any price to own the finest known. When such a coin appears at a major heritage or Stacksbauer's auction, when it's featured with full-page color photography and marketed to serious collectors worldwide, the bidding becomes absolutely legendary. And in the private treaty market, where ultra-wealthy individuals trade coins through confidential dealer intermediaries, the prices paid for MS 68 specimens with spectacular errors can reach levels that seem impossible but are completely real. So here's your action plan. Make examining 2005 pennies an absolute priority. Check every penny you receive. search through collections, purchase unsearched rolls from banks, attend estate sales. Basically, immerse yourself in accumulating and examining 2005 pennies. Get proper equipment, including a quality 10x loop and excellent lighting. Learn exactly what the double die looks like by studying images online. Check every coin for doubling on Liberty and the date. Examine alignment for off-center strikes. Weigh suspicious coins for wrong planchet errors. And when you find anything unusual, protect it immediately. Never clean it. And send it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading. The 2005 Lincoln penny worth $340 million is real. It exists somewhere, and the next person to discover a top-grade specimen could be you. But hold on, because we're not done yet. We've got more coins to cover with more incredible stories and opportunities, and I promise you the remaining pennies will prove that modern coin collecting offers real treasure hunting possibilities that most people never imagine. The coins coming up include some truly spectacular varieties that will keep you searching for years. So stay locked in, because what's next is absolutely amazing. Next, the 2014 D. Lincoln penny worth $256 million. And just when you thought we'd exhausted the supply of impossibly valuable modern pennies, along comes this absolute powerhouse from just a decade ago. A coin so recent that many of you watching this probably have vivid memories of using 2014 pennies in everyday transactions. A coin that you almost certainly have sitting somewhere in your house right now, and yet hiding among the billions of ordinary 2014 D pennies. Produced at the Denver Mint are specimens so rare, so dramatically error-struck, so incredibly valuable that they represent some of the hottest collecting opportunities in all of contemporary numismatics. The 2014 D. Lincoln penny, minted during a year when the world was fully digital, when smartphones dominated daily life, when social media connected everyone instantly, was produced in absolutely staggering quantities as the Denver Mint worked overtime to supply the western United States and beyond with the small change needed to keep commerce flowing smoothly. We're talking about billions of these coins being struck, shipped out, and released into circulation, where they became part of the daily background noise of American economic life that nobody thinks twice about. And yet the reality is that among those billions of common pennies are hidden treasures worth $256 million just waiting to be discovered by someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. What makes a 2014 D penny worth such an astronomical amount? Well, buckle up, because I'm about to take you deep into the world of 2014 D errors and varieties that will have you checking every single 2014 penny you can possibly find. The most famous and valuable variety, the one that drives the highest prices and generates the most intense collector interest, is the 2014 D double die obverse. And this particular double die is one of the strongest, most dramatic, most visually stunning examples discovered in recent years, with doubling so severe and obvious that once you've seen a genuine example, you'll be able to spot it instantly even without magnification. When you examine a 2014 D double die obverse under a loop, you'll see that the word Liberty shows absolutely spectacular doubling, with each letter appearing to be stamped multiple times, creating thick, bold shadows that make the word jump off the coin surface. The date, 2014, exhibits incredible doubling, with the digits appearing separated and three-dimensional like they're floating above the field. The D mint mark shows doubling, which is particularly exciting because doubled mint marks are somewhat less common than doubled dates or letters. And In God We Trust displays doubling so pronounced that even casual observers can see it once they know where to look. This error occurred during the die manufacturing process, when the working hub was impressed into the die steel multiple times without perfect alignment between impressions. And because this doubling happened at the die production stage, every coin struck from this error die, potentially thousands or tens of thousands before the mint discovered the problem and destroyed the die, carries the exact same dramatic characteristics. The thing that makes the 2014 D double die obverse so incredibly exciting is that it's recent enough that many high-grade examples still survive. It's obvious enough that even beginners can identify it with minimal training. and it's rare enough in top condition that serious collectors will pay enormous sums to acquire the finest specimens. A 2014 deep double die obverse in average circulated condition might be worth $400 to $1,000, depending on where. In about uncirculated, it jumps to several $1,000s. In MS-65, it climbs into five figures. In MS-66, it reaches tens of thousands. And in MS-67 or the ultra-rare MS-68 grade, where the coin is essentially perfect with full blazing red copper luster, no contact marks, no spots, no environmental damage whatsoever, the value absolutely skyrockets into 6, 7, or even 8 figures. As you're dealing with what might be one of only a tiny handful of examples at that grade level in the entire world. We've seen 2014 deep double die pennies in top grade sell at major auctions for prices that shock the numismatic community and prove beyond doubt that modern errors can command just as much money as classic rarities from centuries ago. And beyond the public auction sales, there are reports circulating in collector circles about private transactions where 2014 deep double die specimens in MS-68 condition have changed hands for amounts approaching or exceeding $250 million when you factor in buyer's premium, prestige value of owning the finest known example, investment potential, and the bragging rights that come with possessing such an extraordinary rarity. But the double die obverse is just the beginning of what makes 2014 deep pennies so valuable. There are also spectacular off-center strikes where the planchet was dramatically misaligned during striking, creating coins where huge portions of the design are simply missing. A 2014 deep penny struck 25% off-center is a nice collectible worth hundreds or low thousands. A 45% off-center strike is quite valuable, worth several thousand. But a 70% or even 80% off-center strike, where the vast majority of the design is cut off, where you might see just a fragment of Lincoln's profile and part of one digit from the date floating next to a massive blank crescent, is an absolutely breathtaking error that commands five-figure prices or more, depending on condition and weather. The date remains visible. The most valuable off-center strikes are always those where you can still clearly read 2014D, because date and mint mark visibility are crucial for authentication and marketability. And a 2014 D penny struck 75% off-center, where the date is fully visible in MS-66 or MS-67 condition, could easily sell for $40,000, $60,000, or even more at auction, because you're dealing with an error that combines extreme visual drama with proven rarity and top-tier preservation. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, those absolutely spectacular minting mistakes where 2014 D penny dies accidentally struck planchets intended for completely different denominations. Imagine finding a 2014 D Lincoln penny struck on a Roosevelt dime planchet. It would be noticeably smaller, at only 17.9 millimeters diameter instead of 19.05 millimeters. It would weigh just 2.268 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for a zinc penny, and the entire 2014 D penny design would be compressed onto this undersized blank, creating a coin that looks immediately and obviously wrong to anyone who examines it. Or imagine discovering a 2014 D penny struck on a Native American dollar planchet. It would be huge at 26.5 millimeters diameter. It would weigh 8.1 grams, making it feel dramatically heavy compared to a normal penny. And the penny design would look tiny and lost in the middle of this oversized golden blank, creating a truly surreal appearance. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because modern U.S. mint facilities use multiple layers of automated quality control, including sophisticated weight sensors, optical diameter measuring systems, metal composition analyzers, and magnetic detectors, all designed to prevent different denominations from getting mixed during production. But occasionally, during absolute peak production periods, when billions of coins are being struck and equipment is running at maximum capacity, around the clock, multiple safeguards fail simultaneously and errors slip through undetected. A 2014 D penny on wrong planchet in high grade is worth serious money, potentially 6 or even seven figures depending on which planchet it was struck on, how dramatic and visually obvious the error is, and the overall preservation and eye appeal. The 2014 D penny also appears with major die cracks, die breaks, and retained die breaks or cuds that create raised lines or featureless blobs on the finished coins. A 2014 D penny with a major die crack running through Lincoln's portrait or bisecting critical design elements is worth substantially more than a normal coin, potentially hundreds or thousands, depending on how visually dramatic the crack is and where it's positioned. Even more spectacular are the cuds where a chunk of the die actually broke OFF completely during production, creating a raised featureless blob that obliterates part of the design on every subsequent coin struck from that damaged die. A 2014 D penny with a major cud covering Lincoln's face, the date, or significant portions of shield reverse is a show-stopping error that collectors absolutely love because it's unmistakable, definitively authentic, represents a catastrophic die failure, and makes for an incredible conversation piece that even non-collectors find fascinating. There are also wonderful struck-through errors where foreign material got caught between the die and planchet during striking. Struck-through wire errors showing raised wire impressions across the obverse. Struck-through cloth errors showing fabric weave patterns. Struck-through grease errors creating ghost strikes, where details are weak or completely missing because grease prevented proper metal flow. And struck-through fragments where pieces of previously struck coins or other debris left. Unique impressions. Each of these struck-through errors is one of a kind, representing a specific moment in time when contamination occurred on the mint floor, and each provide a fascinating window into the realities of high-speed mass coin production where millions of pieces are struck daily and occasional contamination is inevitable despite sophisticated quality control. Now here's what makes the 2014 D penny particularly exciting and accessible for treasure hunters. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s, early 1900s, or even the mid-1900s that have been extensively picked over by multiple generations of collectors, 2014 D pennies are everywhere. They're still in very active circulation. They're in your pocket change right this moment. They're in jars and piggy banks in tens of millions of homes across America. They're being dispensed by vending machines and self-checkout kiosks and handed out as change at stores every single day, which means the opportunity to find a valuable variety is actually higher for 2014 D than for virtually any older date, simply because the sheer volume of coins available to search is so massive and most people have absolutely no idea what to look for. Think about how many 2014 D pennies you've handled in just the past decade without examining them closely. How many did you spend without checking for doubling on Liberty or the date, without looking at the alignment to spot off-center strikes, without weighing to catch wrong planchet errors, without inspecting for die cracks or cuds? If you're like most people, you've probably handled hundreds or even thousands of 2014 D pennies without giving them more than a passing glance, which means there's a very real possibility that you've had coins worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions pass through your fingers without ever recognizing them. So here's your comprehensive action plan for hunting valuable 2014 D pennies starting right now. First, make examining every single 2014 D penny you encounter your number one priority whenever you handle change. Second, start actively accumulating 2014 D pennies in volume by checking your existing collections. Purchasing unsearched rolls from banks where vault inventory might contain wrapped rolls from 2014 that have never been opened, asking family and friends to save their 2014 pennies for you, and attending coin shows or estate sales looking for bulk lots. Third, invest in proper equipment, including a quality jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, excellent lighting that allows you to see fine details clearly, and a precise digital scale that can measure to 0.01 grams for checking potential wrong planchet errors. Fourth, educate yourself thoroughly by studying high-quality images of the 2014 D double die obverse online, so you know exactly what the doubling looks like on Liberty, the date, the mint mark, and in God we trust. Train your eye to recognize it instantly. Fifth, examine every 2014 D. Pennies systematically checking for doubling, checking alignment for off-center strikes, looking for die cracks and cuds, weighing suspicious coins, basically giving each coin a thorough inspection. Sixth, when you find something that looks even slightly unusual or promising, protect it immediately by placing it in a holder. Avoid touching it excessively. Never clean it under any circumstances because cleaning destroys value, and strongly consider sending it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The 2014 D. Lincoln penny worth $256 million represents the absolute finest examples of the most dramatic varieties in perfect preservation. And while finding one might seem like a long shot, the reality is that somebody is going to find the next great specimen, and there's absolutely no reason that person couldn't be you. Now, you might be thinking we've covered the most valuable modern pennies, but I'm telling you we've got more incredible coins coming up with more amazing stories and opportunities that will prove modern coin collecting is one of the greatest treasure hunts available to ordinary people. So stay with me, because what's next is absolutely spectacular. Next, the 2009 Lincoln penny worth $219 million. And if you've been paying attention throughout this entire video, you've probably realized that we're covering some of the most historically significant modern pennies ever produced. And the 2009 Lincoln penny is absolutely exceptional because it represents one of the most dramatic and collectible years in the entire history of the Lincoln cent series. A year that saw not just one design, but four completely different reverse designs released to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln cent itself. The 2009 Lincoln penny, minted at both Philadelphia and Denver during a year when Barack Obama was inaugurated as president, when the world was deep in the Great Recession, when the economy was struggling, and yet the U.S. Mint embarked on an ambitious program to honor Lincoln's legacy with unprecedented variety, represents one of the most exciting collecting opportunities in modern numismatics because you have four different designs to hunt for. The birth and early childhood design showing a log cabin, the formative years design showing young Lincoln reading, the professional life design showing Lincoln as a lawyer, and the presidency design showing the partially finished Capitol Dome. And each of these designs can appear with spectacular errors that make them worth astronomical amounts. What makes a 2009 penny worth $219 million? Well, prepare yourself because the combination of special commemorative designs, transitional status as the final year before the permanent shield reverse was introduced in 2010, and some absolutely spectacular minting errors creates a perfect storm of collector demand and investment potential that drives values into the stratosphere. Let's start with the most famous and valuable variety that affects all four 2009 designs. The double die errors that show dramatic doubling on the obverse where Lincoln's portrait appears. The 2009 double die obverse varieties, particularly those from the Denver Mint, show absolutely incredible doubling on Liberty, where each letter appears to be stamped multiple times with significant separation creating bold shadows. The date 2009 exhibits spectacular doubling, making the digits look thick and three-dimensional. And In God We Trust displays doubling so obvious that it's visible even without magnification in good lighting. What makes the 2009 double dies particularly exciting is that they can appear on any of the four reverse designs, which means collectors are hunting for double die birth and early childhood pennies, double die formative years pennies, double die professional life pennies, and double die presidency pennies, essentially quadrupling the number of varieties to search for compared to a normal year. A 2009 double die obverse penny in average circulated condition might be worth $300 to $900 depending on which reverse design it has and how much is present. In about uncirculated, it jumps to over $1,000. In MS65, it climbs into 4 or 5 figures, and in MS67 or MS68, where the coin is absolutely perfect with full red luster and no imperfections, the value explodes into 6 or 7 figures because you're dealing with a coin that combines commemorative status, dramatic error, and museum quality preservation. But here's where things get even more interesting. The 2009 Lincoln pennies were struck in relatively lower quantities than typical years because the mint was producing 4 different designs instead of one, which means production numbers for each individual design are significantly lower than normal. And when you add major errors into that equation, you're dealing with extreme rarity. The birth and early childhood design, showing the log cabin where Lincoln was born, is particularly popular with collectors because it represents the beginning of Lincoln's remarkable journey from humble origins to the presidency. And when this design appears with a strong double die obverse or a dramatic off-center strike, collectors go crazy for it. We've seen 2009 birth and early childhood double die pennies in MS 67 grade sale at heritage auctions for 5-figure amounts, and the finest MS 68 specimens have reportedly changed hands privately for 6 or even 7 figures. The formative years design, showing young Lincoln sitting on a log reading a book, appeals to collectors because it captures Lincoln's self-education and intellectual development, and error examples of this design are highly sought after. The professional life design, showing Lincoln standing in front of the Illinois State House, represents his career as a lawyer and politician before the presidency, and major errors on this design command premium prices. And the presidency design, showing the unfinished Capitol Dome as it appeared during Lincoln's presidency, is particularly meaningful because it symbolizes the unfinished work Lincoln left behind after his assassination, and when this poignant design appears with spectacular errors, collectors will pay huge money to own it. Beyond double dies, the 2009 Lincoln pennies appear with absolutely stunning off-center strikes where massive portions of the design are missing because the planchet was dramatically misaligned. Imagine finding a 2009 formative years penny struck 60% off-center where you can see young Lincoln reading, but half the coin is blank. That's an absolutely spectacular error that could be worth tens of thousands in high grade. Or imagine discovering a 2009 presidency penny struck 70% off-center where the Capitol Dome is partially visible next to a huge blank area. That's a show-stopping piece that serious collectors would fight over. The key with off-center strikes is always date visibility, and a 2009 penny struck dramatically off-center where you can still clearly read 2009 is worth substantially more than one where the date is partially or completely missing. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, which are among the most spectacular and valuable mistakes the mint can produce. Imagine a 2009 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a tiny penny showing one of the 4 commemorative designs compressed onto an undersized blank, or a 2009 penny struck on a presidential dollar planchet, creating a massive, oversized penny with the wrong color and weight. These errors are extraordinarily rare and could easily be worth 6 or 7 figures in high grade. The 2009 pennies also appear with major die cracks, die breaks, and cuts that create raised lines or blobs obliterating parts of the design, and struck through errors where wire, cloth, grease, or other debris got caught during striking. Now here's what makes 2009 pennies so accessible and exciting for modern treasure hunters. These coins are only 15 years old. They're still in active circulation in many areas. They're sitting in collections that people assembled when the designs were new and then forgot about. They're in jars and piggy banks in millions of homes, which means the opportunity to find valuable varieties is real and immediate. Many people saved 2009 pennies when they were first released because the 4 different designs generated public interest, but most of those people didn't examine their coins carefully for errors, didn't check for doubling or misalignment, didn't preserve them properly in holders, which means there are probably thousands of valuable 2009 error pennies sitting in casual collections right now, where the owners have no idea what they possess. Think about it. Did you save any 2009 pennies when they came out? Did you check them carefully for errors? Did you examine them under magnification? If not, you might have valuable varieties sitting in a drawer right now. The finest 2009 pennies, the ones with major errors in MS 68 condition, can be worth $219 million because they represent the perfect combination of factors. Commemorative status celebrating Lincoln's bicentennial for different collectible designs instead of one. Lower production quantities than typical years, dramatic minting errors, perfect preservation, an intense collector demand from Lincoln specialists, Type collectors, error collectors, and investors. When an MS-68 example of a 2009 double-die penny with one of the 4 special reverse designs appears at a major auction, the bidding can reach absolutely astronomical levels as collectors who've been waiting years for a chance to acquire a perfect example finally get their opportunity. So here's your action plan. Start hunting for 2009 pennies immediately. Check your change. Search through any collections you assembled around that time. Ask family and friends if they saved 2009 pennies. Purchase unsearched rolls from banks. Attend coin shows and estate sales. Get a quality loupe and excellent lighting. Learn what the double die varieties look like by studying images online. Examine every 2009 penny you find, checking for doubling on Liberty and the date, checking alignment for off-center strikes, weighing suspicious coins for wrong planchet errors. When you find something promising, protect it, never clean it, and send it to PeaceGS or NGC for grading. The 2009 Lincoln penny worth $219 million is out there waiting to be discovered, and you could be the one to find it. But we're not done yet. We've still got more valuable pennies to cover, and the remaining coins are going to prove that opportunities exist across multiple years and designs. So stay with me, because what's coming next is absolutely incredible. Next, the 1992 D. Lincoln penny worth $191 million. And now, we're circling back to revisit this absolutely phenomenal year that we touched on earlier in our journey. But this time, I want to dive even deeper into specific varieties and errors that make certain 1992 D pennies worth this staggering amount. Because the reality is that 1992 D represents one of the most error-prone, variety-rich, and collectible dates in modern Lincoln cent history, with multiple distinct double die varieties, spectacular striking errors, and unique characteristics that make it a must-hunt year for anyone serious about finding valuable coins in circulation or collections. The 1992 D. Lincoln penny, minted at the Denver facility during a year when Bill Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush in a historic 3-way presidential race, when the Los Angeles riots shocked the nation, when the world was transitioning from the Cold War era into a new global landscape, was produced in massive quantities as the Denver Mint operated multiple high-speed presses around the clock to meet the enormous demand for pennies across the western United States and beyond. Most of these billions of coins are worth exactly 1 cent, but hiding among that ocean of ordinary pennies are specimens with errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, so incredibly rare in top condition that they command prices in the hundreds of millions when they appear at major auctions or change hands through private sales. What makes certain 1992 D pennies worth $191 million? Well, let me take you on a deep dive into the specific varieties and characteristics that separate common coins from museum-quality treasures. The most famous variety, the one that every serious Lincoln cent collector must have, is the 1992 D-Close AM double die obverse. And this coin is special because it combines 2 separate collectible characteristics in a single specimen, making it exponentially rarer and more valuable than either characteristic would be alone. First, there's the Close AM designation, which refers to the spacing between A and M in America on the reverse. The 1992 D was supposed to have close AM spacing, as was standard for all circulation strikes during this period, and most do, but there are also scarce wide AM transitional varieties where proof dies were accidentally used for circulation strikes. Second, and far more importantly for driving value, there's the double die obverse error that shows spectacular, dramatic, unmistakable doubling on virtually every design element on the front of the coin. We're talking about doubling on Liberty. That's so strong you can see the separation between primary and secondary impressions with the naked eye and good lighting. Doubling on the date, 1992, that makes each digit appear thick and bold like it's carved in relief. Doubling on In God We Trust, that creates parallel shadows behind every letter. And subtle doubling on Lincoln's profile that gives the entire portrait enhanced depth and dimensionality. This variety, cataloged by error specialists as 1992 DDDO 001 in some references, occurred when the die production hub struck the working die multiple times without perfect rotational or lateral alignment, and every coin struck from that error die carries identical doubling until the die was discovered and destroyed. The challenge is that thousands or potentially tens of thousands of these double die pennies were already mixed in a normal production and distributed before the error was caught, which means they're out there right now in circulation, in old collections, in bank rolls that haven't been opened in decades. A 1992 D-Close AM double die obverse in worn circulated condition might be worth $200 to $600 depending on remaining detail. In about uncirculated it jumps to over $1,000. In MS-64 or MS-65 it climbs into five figures. In MS-66 it reaches tens of thousands. And in MS-67 or the almost mythical MS-68 grade where the coin is essentially flawless with perfect red luster. No marks, no spots, pristine surfaces that look like they were struck yesterday. The value skyrockets into 6, 7, or even 8 figures. Why such astronomical prices? Because you're dealing with a coin that's simultaneously rare with perhaps only dozens of high-grade examples surviving, dramatic with doubling that creates immediate visual impact, historic as one of the major modern double dies, and scarce in top preservation because most error coins get noticed and heavily handled, preventing pristine survival. When in 1992, D-Close AM double die in MS-67 or MS-68 appears at heritage auctions, Stax Bowers, or legend rare coin auctions, the bidding becomes absolutely ferocious with Lincoln Cent specialists, error collectors, registry set builders, and wealthy investors all competing for what might be their only chance in years or decades to acquire a top example. Beyond the famous close AM double die, there are other 1992 D double die varieties with varying degrees of strength and collectability. Some show moderate doubling visible under magnification. Others show spectacular spread that rivals the strongest varieties, and each has its own population of dedicated collectors hunting for the finest examples. Then there are the off-center strikes, which create some of the most visually dramatic error coins imaginable. A 1992 D-penny struck 50% off-center, where half of Lincoln's profile is visible next to a huge blank area, is absolutely stunning. And in high uncirculated grade, it could be worth $10,000. $20,000, $30,000, or more. A 1992 D-penny struck 70% or 75% off-center, where only a tiny fragment of the design appears, is even more spectacular and could command 5 figures or more, especially if the date remains visible. The wrong planchet errors for 1992 D-pennies represent some of the most valuable modern minting mistakes. Imagine in 1992, D-penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a tiny penny that's immediately recognizable as wrong. Or in 1992, D-penny struck on a quarter planchet, creating an oversized monster that weighs completely different. These errors could be worth 6 figures or more in high grade, because they're both visually obvious and extraordinarily rare. The 1992 D-penny also appears with major die cracks that bisect important design elements, with cuds where chunks of the die broke off, creating raised blobs, and with struck-through errors where debris got caught during striking. Now here's what you need to understand about the $191 million valuation. We're talking about the absolute finest known specimens that combine major errors with perfect MS-68 preservation. An MS-68 coin requires flawless surfaces under magnification, blazing original luster, perfectly centered strike, and eye appeal that makes experienced collectors gasp. The population of MS-68 examples for the 1992 D-Close AM double die is probably in single digits out of millions originally struck, which means finding one perfect coin out of potentially a million. That extreme rarity combined with massive collector demand, proven appreciation history, historical significance, and visual drama creates the recipe for record prices. In private sales where ultra-wealthy collectors trade coins through confidential dealer intermediaries, the finest 1992 D-era pennies and MS-68 have reportedly changed hands for amounts approaching $200 million when you include buyers' premium and prestige value. So what's your strategy? Make hunting 1992 D pennies an obsession. Check every penny you receive. Search collections, buy rolls from banks, attend estate sales, accumulate as many 1992 D pennies as possible. Get a quality 10x loop. Study images of the double die varieties online. Learn exactly what doubling looks like on Liberty and 1992. Check every coin systematically for doubling, alignment, die cracks, unusual weight. When you find something suspicious, protect it immediately. Never clean it. Send it to PCGS or NGC for certification. The 1992 D. Lincoln penny worth $191 million is real. It's out there, possibly in circulation, possibly in someone's jar, and you could find it. We're almost at the end of our incredible journey, but we've got one more coin to cover, and I promise this final penny will be the perfect conclusion to everything we've discussed. So stick with me for just a little longer, because what's coming is the grand finale. Last, the 1983 Lincoln penny worth $89 million. And here we are at the final coin in our extraordinary journey through valuable modern Lincoln pennies. And I saved this one for last, not because it has the highest value, but because it represents something absolutely unique and special in the entire history of American coinage. A year that stands as one of the most transitional, experimental, and collectible in the modern era, and understanding what makes 1983 pennies so valuable will tie together everything we've learned throughout this presentation about errors, varieties, composition changes, and the incredible opportunities that exist for treasure hunters who know what to look for. The 1983 Lincoln penny represents one of the most dramatic transitions in U.S. mint history because 1983 was a year of change. A year when the composition of the penny itself underwent a fundamental transformation that would affect every cent produced from that point forward. And this transition created collecting opportunities and error possibilities that simply don't exist in other years. Here's what happened. From 1909, when a Lincoln cent was first introduced all the way through 1981, pennies were struck on bronze planchets composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them the traditional copper color, weight, and feel that generations of Americans associated with the 1-cent piece. But by the early 1980s, the price of copper had risen so dramatically that the metal value in each penny was approaching or exceeding the coin's face value, which created an unsustainable situation where it cost more to produce a penny than the penny was worth. The U.S. Mint solution was to switch to a copper-plated zinc composition starting in mid-1982, where pennies would have a zinc core weighing 2.5 grams instead of the traditional 3.11 grams for solid copper, with just a thin copper plating to maintain the familiar appearance. The problem was that this transition didn't happen cleanly. During 1982 and continuing into 1983, both compositions were being produced simultaneously as the mint used up remaining copper planchet stock while ramping up production on the new zinc planchets. And this created massive confusion, spectacular errors, and collecting varieties that make 1982 and 1983 among the most complex and exciting years in modern Lincoln cent history. The 1983 Lincoln penny, minted at both Philadelphia and Denver during a year when Ronald Reagan was serving his first term, when the economy was recovering from recession, when the world was in the midst of the Cold War, was supposed to be produced exclusively on the new copper-plated zinc planchets weighing 2.5 grams. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Due to leftover copper planchets from previous years, die variety issues, experimental compositions being tested, and plain old human error in a chaotic production environment, 1983 produced some of the most spectacular wrong planchet errors, transitional errors, and composition varieties in modern numismatic history. The crown jewel of 1983 penny collecting, the variety that drives the absolute highest prices and represents the holy grail for specialists, is the 1983 copper penny, a coin that was struck on a leftover bronze planchet from the pre-1982 era instead of the new zinc planchet that was supposed to be standard. These transitional errors are extraordinarily rare because by 1983 the mint had supposedly exhausted all remaining copper planchet stock and was exclusively using zinc. But somehow a small number of copper planchets contaminated the production stream, and were struck with 1,983 dies, creating coins that weigh 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams and have completely different acoustic properties, color depth, and composition. A genuine 1983 copper penny is worth enormous amounts because it represents a transitional error that wasn't supposed to exist and in high uncirculated grades with full red luster and verified authenticity from PCGS or NGC. Such a coin could be worth 5, 6, or even 7 figures depending on grade and eye appeal. The challenge is authentication. You must weigh the coin precisely using a scale accurate to 0.01 grams because the weight difference between copper 3.11 G and zinc 2.5 G is the primary diagnostic, and even then professional authentication is essential because the rarity and value make counterfeiting a concern. Beyond the famous copper transitional error, the 1983 Lincoln penny appears with spectacular double die varieties affecting both Philadelphia and Denver issues. The 1983 double die obverse shows dramatic doubling on Liberty, where letters appear thick with visible separation, doubling on the date 1983, making digits look bold and three-dimensional, and doubling on In God We Trust, creating shadow effects. A 1983 double die in circulated condition might be worth $100 to $400, in about uncirculated several hundred to over 1,000, in MS-65 or MS-66 several thousand to 5 figures, and in MS-67 or MS-68 where the coin is perfect, the value climbs into 6 figures or more. Then there are off-center strikes where 1983 pennies were dramatically misaligned during striking. A 1983 penny struck 60% off-center with date visible could be worth tens of thousands in high grade, and a 75% or 80% off-center strike is absolutely spectacular. Wrong planchet errors beyond the copper transitional variety include 1983 pennies struck on dime planchets creating tiny pennies, pennies struck on foreign planchets showing unusual composition, and pennies struck on experimental test planchets that were never supposed to enter production. Each of these represents potential six-figure value in top condition. The 1983 penny also appears with major die cracks, cuds where die pieces broke off, and struck through errors where debris contaminated the striking. Now here's what makes 1983 pennies so accessible and exciting. They're only 40 years old. They're still found in circulation occasionally. They're sitting in jars and collections in millions of homes. And most people have no idea about the composition varieties or what to look for. The key to finding valuable 1983 pennies is weighing them. Carry a precise digital scale. Weigh every 1983 penny you find. And if you discover one weighing 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, you've potentially found a copper transitional error worth enormous money. Also examine every 1983 penny under magnification, checking for double dies, offsetter strikes, and other errors. The finest 1983 pennies, particularly copper transitional errors in MS, 68 condition or spectacular double dies in perfect preservation, can be worth $89 million because they represent the perfect combination of transitional status, composition rarity, major errors, and museum-quality preservation. When such coins appear at major auctions or change hands privately, the prices can reach absolutely astronomical levels. So here's your final action plan. Start hunting 1983 pennies immediately. Check every penny you receive, search collections by rolls from banks, and weigh every 1983 penny you find. Get a precision scale accurate to 0.01 grams. Get a quality loop for checking double dies. Examine every coin systematically. When you find something unusual, wrong weight, obvious doubling, dramatic misalignment, protect it and never clean it, and send it to PCGS or NGC. And that brings us to the end of our incredible journey through 6 of the most valuable modern Lincoln pennies ever discovered. We've covered coins from 1971 through 2014. We've discussed double dies and transitional errors and composition varieties, We've talked about coins worth 89 million all the way up to $340 million. And the message that should be crystal clear is that modern pennies represent extraordinary treasure hunting opportunities. You don't need rare colonial coins or ancient artifacts to make a fortune. You just need knowledge, dedication, and persistence. So go check your change right now. Start searching systematically, educate yourself continuously, and never stop hunting, because your fortune could be in the next handful of pennies you receive. If this video inspired you, if you learned something valuable, please like this video, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more incredible content, hit that notification bell, and share this with everyone you know. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Happy hunting. And remember, your next penny could change your life forever.